Okay. I hope you are able to enjoy being out and about in Des Moines, that it isn't 30 below and you're cooped up in and not enjoying anything. I hope you're getting out and getting some external enjoyment out of life. I want to talk about planting the trees. I mean, certainly you're not going to plant a banana tree in Des Moines. The weather isn't appropriate for it. The tree would freeze out. Even in Michigan or in Des Moines, if you want to buy a tree, you're going to look for a place where the tree has been grown locally. Even when you get a tree from a big box store, sometimes they're grown in a different state than you live in and shipped in. And I've had a little trouble with that, so I've learned to purchase trees that were grown in a nearby location. And you can usually do that. Even in Des Moines, you should be able to find some place where the trees were grown there in your area. You're going to be probably looking, if you're going to be growing fruit in Des Moines, at apples or maybe peaches or maybe cherries, sweet cherries. I had all three in my yard in Michigan, and the apple trees did the best for me. We loved the peach trees. We lost one to some damage. We had two, but once we got started, it really produced peaches. About every other year we'd get a bunch of peaches on it, but the first year was about the third year of planting. So it took about 3 years before it was going to start having peaches for us. And it had about 6 wonderful peaches on it. They were full-size peaches, and you could tell they were going to be just juicy and sweet. And we were watching those peaches every day. And finally I told Debbie, I says, I'm going to come home from work tomorrow. I'm going to pick those peaches, and we'll have them for a couple of days. And the next night I got home and they were gone. And I thought, well, maybe she picked them. So I went in and she said, no, she hadn't picked them. And when we went out and looked, under the tree were all of the peach pits under the tree. Nothing but peach pits. So, that was quite disturbing to think you were going to have your first crop off of your work and the raccoons beat you to it. They had been watching those peaches every day too, and they're just as good a judge as when they're perfect as we are. So that may happen. You'll have to be ready for that. With the apple trees, I had better luck, but one of them I had put chicken wire around them to keep the rabbits out, because they will chew the bark right off of trees. And one winter we got, I think it was the second winter they were in, we got 2 foot of snow, and the rabbits got over the chicken wire and chewed the tree right off, one of the 3 trees that we had. And fortunately, it did resprout from the trunk and had branches lower to the ground than what would be normal, but we have to prune the trees anyway, so it was fine, and it had good fruit on it. Sometimes if they were to kill the trunk too low, when the branches came out, they would not be the branches that produce the fruit for you, because they graft in a fruit onto a different root system. They get a very hardy root, and then they take a branch off of an apple tree and they graft it into that root, and the root feeds the branch, and the branch produces the apples. So if it gets damaged below the graft, then you're not going to get an apple like you expect when it grows up and becomes a tree. But anyway, we had good luck with those 3 trees. They were all different varieties of apples and had a different flavor to them. And we found that to make cider, if we put all 3 together to make cider, it had a wonderful flavor to it. I also planted a cherry tree, just one cherry tree, and it got blossoms every year, but it never had fruit on it. So I went back and I asked them what was going on, and they said, well, that tree needs another variety of cherry to pollinate, cross-pollinate with. So you're not going to get cherries until you do that. So I bought another tree, a different kind of a sweet cherry, planted it, and they both got flowers, but there weren't any cherries. So I went back, he says, well, no, this is the variety you need. So if you're going to raise cherries, you need to know more about them than I did in order to raise cherries. So I got the third tree, planted it, and we started getting cherries on the trees, and I was so excited. I didn't realize how quickly birds can clean a tree. So I really never got any cherries off those trees. The last one had cherries that I thought I was going to get, but when I tried one, they weren't sweet yet. So I was waiting, and all of a sudden they were gone. All of the trees were cleaned right off. So, you've got to be ready for putting in a lot of work and maybe buying netting to put over trees or whatever if you're going to have cherries. Peaches, you're going to have to worry about raccoons in the area. You'll get some because the tree will get big enough that you can share, but you're going to have to be fighting nature to get some peaches if you're growing peaches. The apples, we had 3 trees. They all produced very well, so there was no problem with getting apples, and we enjoyed those. And we did enjoy the peaches when the tree got big enough that we knew we were going to get peaches off the tree and not the raccoons get all of the peaches. So one of the things I would advise if you're going to raise like apple trees, think about the room that you've got. You're going to want a sunny space. You're going to want a place where you can spread them out at least 8 foot apart and away from buildings or whatever by at least 8 feet, so that when they grow you can work around them. And you're going to want to prune them. It's just like pruning grapevines. If you want fruit, you don't want a great big bunch of bush or tree. So they say with an apple tree, you want to be able to look through the tree. You don't want branches crossing over each other, filling the inside of the tree. You want the sun to be able to go through it, be able to see through it. So if you're not willing to be pruning trees, you're probably not going to get a good harvest of apples, and you're going to be disappointed. And when you're planting the trees, you want to make sure that you have good soil. Especially in neighborhoods where they've built a bunch of homes, they usually have taken off all of the topsoil, built the homes, and then brought back in topsoil. And they give you just enough sometimes to grow grass. So buy some topsoil, dig a hole the size of a bushel basket, and then put the tree in and fill in the rest of it with good topsoil. And whatever you had there, mix it together. And you should do fine that way. With apples, I found I did have to spray them with something to keep the bugs out, because the bugs actually lay their eggs while it's still in the flowering in the spring. And the egg is laid before the apple forms even. And that's why the hole goes from the middle of the apple in the core area out of the apple. It's got a hole that goes all the way because the egg or whatever was put in where the core will grow. So be ready to spray trees. As long as you don't take any of the fruit for 2 or 3 weeks after you've done your last spray, then it's washed off most of the spray, and you can just take some soapy water or something and get the rest of any chemicals off. But if you don't want worms in your apples, that's what I found I had to do. So I hope this has been a little informational for you. Find a good place to plant where there's sun and plenty of room for the tree to grow. Make sure you give it good topsoil and wrap the trunk so that the rabbits don't chew through the bark and kill the tree, because that will happen in a hurry. As soon as that bark is gone around the trunk, it can't feed the trunk up above that damage to the bark. So have a good day. God bless. Bye.